Let's begin with a prayer. Will you join me, please? Gracious God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight. For you, O Lord, are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Palm Sunday is a turning point in the Christian year. It's a day when we remember crowds gathered around Jesus and so much excitement and hope. But we also know that crowds are fickle things. Crowds can be dangerous. Public opinion and crowds can say one thing on one day, but disappear the next. So how do we mark this Palm Sunday? This Palm Sunday when we are all too aware of the danger of crowds. I've seen some strange parades of sorts during this time of social distancing. One neighborhood in St. Paul encourages kids and parents to get on their bikes at the same time and then ride down the street spaced out in a parade. I've seen birthday parties of sorts in which people drive up waving, followed by another carload a minute later. Not to mention the neighborhoods that gather for calisthenics or yoga with participants spaced out in yards and along the sidewalk. We are becoming creative in showing our concern for others. I've been truly impressed by the creative approaches making the best of our situation. Not all the time, certainly. Even the most creative people in this community cannot be upbeat all the time. I think in these times it's really important to encourage honesty about what we are feeling, knowing it may vary widely from hour to hour. And so we might also encourage gentleness with others and gentleness with ourselves. So now for the church, what do we do when we're gathering from afar? How do we remember? How do we reenact this day when we cannot even be in the same room, waving our eco palm branches and processing in through a familiar sanctuary? Some are putting tree branches on their doors or in their windows, a sign to those passing by. It's a variation on the theme of placing teddy bears in windows and heart displays on doors that are intended to bring a smile and offer hope and establish a new form of solidarity and community and remind us that in this time we still belong together. So some of you might appreciate the invitation to put an artistic palm branch on your door for this day. We did receive our order of eco palms this week. Central was one of the very first churches to sign up for this program. And after the cancellation of in-person events began, we learned that the harvest had already been completed and the palms were already in the shipping process. So the ones that we received will dry out and we will have them burned to be used next Ash Wednesday. It's a somewhat commonly done liturgical act that one year's palm branches become the ashes for the next year's Ash Wednesday service. Some people do it. I will admit I once almost set a church building on fire as an intern at a church in Georgia on a rainy day. I didn't know that palm branches would burn so high. The ceiling was about 7 feet tall, and the flames went up to within a few inches of the ceiling. We will have our palm branches burned in a safe way. It seems appropriate also as a symbol of grief. A day that palm branches were to help us celebrate will be a ritual of grief for the routines that we're missing and the celebrations that aren't going to happen in the same way that we long to have resume. burning this year's palm branches is also an expression of hope, for it reminds us that the cycle will resume. We will continue. And the ashes will be used in a service in the sanctuary. And we will once again be able to lean in and touch our foreheads and remember that we are all mortal beings, created and loved by God. As we are required to find new ways to worship on this Palm Sunday, one benefit may be that we are forced to use our imaginations in some new ways, to wonder what was it like for Jesus to process into that capital city of Jerusalem. He had been pointed towards Jerusalem for some time. That was the city where the crowds had gathered. That was a city on high alert. That was the place where it was all to happen. And into that city came Jesus riding on a donkey, cheered on by his faithful friends. We don't really know exactly what Jesus' parade looked like. It might have been a small affair. A rather motley crew gathered around him. Scholars are helpful in pointing out the intentional contrast between what Jesus does and the military processions that would have been familiar sights in those Jerusalem streets. Jesus was so vulnerable, yet brave, sitting on that donkey, with unarmed disciples gathered around him, raising their voices in praise, shouting out. And those who were used to trying to broker an uneasy peace become nervous. And they tell Jesus to silence the disciples. And Jesus says, if these were silent, even the stones would shout aloud. I think about that phrase a lot, that if the disciples were silent, even the stones would shout aloud. Sometimes hearing that phrase makes me want to shout, makes me want to be louder, makes me braver. But on this day, when it feels so quiet in the streets of our capital city, I hear those words in a new way. And these words offer encouragement and a reminder that there are times, even when we might be surrounded by people and surrounded by noise, that some things must be done alone. The flip side, that even during quiet, solitary times, even when we must be alone, we are still surrounded by people willing to offer encouragement and support. Jesus will bring out the best and bravest. And so on this Palm Sunday, may we rise to the occasion. May we continue to act in a way that keeps those most vulnerable safe. May we be brave and kind and generous and faithful. Let us march on. May it be so. Amen.